So, good evening. Good evening. This is Jeff Berger coming in from Cape Coral, Florida, with Getting to the Root of It, which is actually series number 11. And we're going to be talking about the microbiome and cancer tonight. And we have Dr. Georgia Balsley, who generally resides in Michigan, but she's tuning in from Taiwan. So, but very excited that she was able to join us tonight from Taiwan. But very quickly, this is a series that we run twice a month. This is the first day that we'll be talking about cancer. And then 2 weeks from this Thursday, we'll be doing part 2 of cancer. And stay tuned to the end for some more info about the next couple of series that we're going to be coming on with regards to the microbiome and autoimmune or any type of mental wellness that correlates to the microbiome. So with that, the microbiome, we're really excited that we are partnered with the first holistic mental wellness company out there that focuses on the microbiome. For those that don't know, it's the gut-brain axis. And this is science that has been coming up with really some amazing reports in regards to gut-brain health. We've been talking about this for months and months. You're going to hear more in the future, so stay tuned. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Georgia Balsley, who I said she resides in Michigan, but she's in Taiwan because her daughter is getting married tomorrow. And she is a daughter, she's a wife, she's a mom of 9 children. She's also a vet. And thank you for your service, Dr. Georgia. And if you could share with the viewers a little bit about your background before we get some questions started for you. Okay?
Great. Thank you for having me, Jeff, and welcome all viewers to Taiwan today. And so I'm coming to you at 7:37 this morning. We're at 7:37 Eastern Standard Time, your time. But yeah, I got involved in holistic medicine actually through my children. I had joined the military and wanted to go into medicine, allopathic medicine. And after my discharge from the military, I wanted to go forward into medicine and started a family, and actually was thwarted into alternative medicine is where I've stayed. And I do traditional naturopathic medicine. I work at a beautiful office in Marshall, Michigan called Outside the Box. I work with an amazing colleague, Dr. Zattel. She is a functional physician, and paired with my traditional naturopathic background, we made an awesome team in helping our patients get to the root of it. And so I'm honored to be here, Jeff, and look forward to this next series.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much. And, you know, we've been doing this series since April. We started out with leaky gut, and then we went into autism. Then we talked about anxiety, depression, suicide, diabetes, and the microbiome has been really a centric focus for science today and how we feel healthy. And, you know, we grew up in an era where we were taught physical health, but we were never taught mental health. And now with these new studies, we're finding that the microbiome, the gut, which is your second brain, talks to the brain. And that is through the vagus nerve. And we're finding that pretty much everything starts in the gut. And we're here to provide some really great nuggets, information for people who are, thinking out of the box, looking for other kinds of information to get some answers, because things are not happening on the Western side of medicine at this particular point, and there are so many other options out there for people to be directed to. And that's, really a purpose of ours, is to provide value and guide them into some learning about different things. So with that, as far as cancer, can you just share some basics about cancer and, where does that all come from? Because my understanding is that we all have cancer cells, but It depends on your metabolism, depends on what you're exposed to, depends on a number of factors before those cancer cells get activated. So can you share just from that perspective to start out?
So we all have damaged cells through oxidation and many other processes. Being exposed to chemicals can affect our DNA structure. And it's, those continued assaults in how our immune system is able to handle things is how diseases actually form. So, cancer is an uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells in the body, and cancer develops in the body in normal control mechanism stops working. Hold on for just a second. Old cells do not die. Instead, they grow out of control and they form new abnormal cells. These extra cells may form a mass or tissue. They're usually called a tumor. Some cancers, such as leukemia, they don't form tumors. There's no tumors. There's no masses that come. It's an abnormal a blood change of the blood cells. And so when I deal with my patients, generally I tell them it's immune system dysfunction, because our body is designed to be able to handle and take care of abnormal cells. We're always constantly trying to repair. It's when the body is unable to, and different nutritional aspects are depleted, that disease starts to form. And what's really interesting is this whole issue with the microbiome in the gut, the gut-brain connection, and how the science on that level is showing more and more about how the diversity of our gut can affect things such as cancer.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And I think that over time we all have realized that there have been many different forms of cancers that have come about because of the foods that we're eating, as well as environmental controlled issues from that perspective, from chemicals and from pollutions and things like that. But so how does the microbiome actually impact or affect cancer per se? Because there's now some new science is coming out with that relationship between the two, and how does that communication really start happening now, or has been really happening with this?
It's actually happening for a long time. We just didn't have knowledge or the time to know what the microbiome actually does. Within the Microbiome Project, I really think in our lifetime, unfortunately, we won't know the true totality of what the microbiome does for us on a full scale. However, science is now leading us to show that the microbiome affects so many functions in the body. And one of that is our immune system. So think about it. Our immune system starts actually in our gut. That's scientifically based. Roughly 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So if we're not addressing our gut and reducing inflammation, creating a more diverse host atmosphere for the microbiome to flourish, then we end up with issues. And it can start as simple as inflammation that turns into something much worse. And so through the Microbiome Project, the relationship to disease is a new and rapidly evolving field. So we're starting to see things like within even the past 6 months, we're reading more and more that, science has found this or that. But the total understanding of the diversity of the microbiome, such as resilience, community disturbances, and extinction, are useful to understand the microbiome. So when we talk about extinction, we could actually have specific flora that no longer resides in our gut that we were actually born with. And some of that comes down to how we've actually sterilized our gut through antibiotic use, foods, and things like that. So our body's full of trillions of bacteria, fungi, and viruses, and they're collectively known as our microbiome. And in fact, there are more than 1 billion bacterial cells, and more than every bacteria virus that make up our microbiome actually exceeds the cells that make up the human body. And there are roughly 400 trillion bacteria cells in the body, and there's only 30 trillion human cells. So obviously it's important, right? And that means you're more bacteria than human. And I said that before, that science is showing that technically we're probably only 10% human when you take in the consideration of all the different types of flora that live within our body that make up who we are as a human being. And did you know that there are 10 microbe cells to every human cell in your body? An estimated 100 trillion microorganisms or microbes such as bacteria, fungi, and viruses dwell in your gut alone. I know that, you know, we live in an age where we try to sterilize everything, but it's really important that we get back to getting certain bacteria in our gut that is very helpful. I mean, we go in and we really scrub our vegetables from our garden, and there's microbes that are on there that are so critical for seeding that gut for a healthy gut function. And there's over 1,000 different kinds of species in our gut. So that's why a diversity of diet is so important. People who tend to eat more of a high carb diet will have a diversity of biome that's indigenous to a carbohydrate diet alone. And so they're missing some things that flora that could live off of, you know, like the cellulose in vegetables or the fibers that are in fruit. So it's important that we use a, you know, a broad spectrum diet, and a healthy one at that. And so they're noticing that when we have a decrease in our microbiome, that in certain diseases, in cancers especially, they're looking at a change in not only the bacteria, but the amount of microbiome that's there. And so when we say amount, it's actually what specific species are in that gut that's contributing actually to a higher inflammatory ratio, and that could create disease. So they're seeing a setup for things like stomach cancer or liver cancer, even pancreatic cancer, that they see a different array of organisms that live within the gut, within individuals that have those specific issues.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So I think what, you know, with everything that you just said, it sounds like the microbiome is really the missing link, could be the missing link to a lot of these therapies out there. And it's a matter of just focusing on the specific microbiota that are living down there, because we are basically walking organism, you know, and or organisms, because there's millions and, you know, billions to trillions in our body. But as we evolve through science, they'll be doing more and more in-depth studies, because right now we are, to my understanding, is that you know, there's a lot of really great products out there that focus on the gut health, but they don't focus on the gut and the brain. And we now know that the gut talks to the brain. It also is going to be it talks to the heart, which is really your third heart. But our science that we're doing is that we're actually targeting the strain level within the species of the genome of that microorganism family. And that's pretty in-depth science, and I'm hearing that they're even going down further to get to a deeper level from that perspective. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding. And, you know, the thing that they're looking at as well is the relationship of the seeding of the gut and how it can enhance therapy. So those individuals that may have disease states, how can they enhance the therapy by technically reseeding that microbiome, the things that they had lost? And so they're analyzing. There's actually a sector of scientists that are analyzing the flora that's in the gut in its relationship into how it may enhance the therapies such as chemotherapy, and how it may target those therapies. And immune therapy is actually would fall in the category of immunotherapy, which we're hearing a lot about as far as, you know, types of therapy for cancer.
Exactly. So in your practice, you're a naturopath and your business partner is a functional medicine. And what you know, she doesn't know, and what she knows, you don't know. So you go back and forth, you know, sharing that expertise, sharing the knowledge. and working really synergistically together. So with that being said, what are some of the protocols that you're using with some of your cancer patients, and what are some of the successes that you're having that you've worked? I'll say a couple of years ago you were working with patients, and now as a couple of years have gone by, newer things are coming out into the forefront, and better science, and better targeting at specific diseases for healing or for curing or whatever the case may be, to get them onto that other side of the spectrum. Share with us a little bit about what you're seeing in your practice today.
Well, when a patient comes in, one of the things that we look at is we look at many things, but specifically we actually need to know what the diet is, right? Because is it life-giving, is it not life-giving? We can't have a bunch of processed foods and expect somebody to heal from that, right? So we have to take diet into consideration. We have to take I'm sorry, I'm staying in a home, so we've got some extra noise. So if you can't hear me, let me know. But so anyway, getting back to diet is important. We also have to detox the body, because a lot of people come in with a massive amount of toxins. They don't realize they're not eliminating well. The body, they're dehydrated, so the body will reabsorb the liquid that's in the intestines. And I know that sounds disgusting, but the body needs fluid to be able to detox and function. So it's critical for that body to be able to work, and it will take that fluid wherever it can. And so, are they eliminating? How are they digesting? How can we reduce the inflammation sources? So, we take a look at where the cancer is. It really doesn't matter to me. Cancer is cancer. It's an immune system dysfunction. So I have to get to the root of the dysfunction and help the body to be able to repair itself. In that, we talk about how the gut is critical and why we have to start with the gut, because it's the source of everything. It's the source of inflammation. It's the source of your nutrition and being able to absorb high amounts of antioxidants and nutrition to be able to help your body heal. And if you're not assimilating and digesting well, you can't. So we have to take a lot of things into consideration. We have patients that come and that have gone through treatment and are going through treatment. We want to be an adjunct therapy to them. That's why they come, so that we can help them with the side effects of chemotherapy. And one of the side effects is that it does totally destroy the microbiome. And we have to be able to reseed that to help keep their immune system up, so that they don't end up acquiring something else, like enteritis, or possibly pneumonia, or some other kind of condition, because they have a weakened immune system. So it's really important. The patients that we have, we're seeing huge shifts by education, and then helping them understand why they do what they do. Because long term, we want to get them from point A to point B, but long term we want them to remain healthy. And so how can they do that if we don't empower them with the right resources and explain to them, that they need to be in partnership with their gut and their microbiome? They really are their best friend, and the reason why they need to do that. And it's amazing. Most of the patients that I get, they're living on that standard American diet, and they don't understand why they need to change anything. And then when it's almost like you share with them what it's doing and why you need to do it, and the light clicks on. It's like, why didn't anybody tell me? This is normal for us, right? And
Absolutely.
so education is extremely important.
Yeah, and you actually covered a couple of the next questions that I was going to ask. SAD, Standard American Diet, is very SAD, very sad. But it's all about education, absolutely. And the more that we're learning about the foods that are really out there, the processed foods, from box to cans, to the GMO foods that are being injected with glyphosate, with the corn and soy genes being impacted, and the wheat fields are being sprayed with Roundup and all this weed killer. It's having a horrific impact on a lot of the baby boomers out there. We're seeing the biggest impact there. And we talk about, reversing. And as you know, I've reversed my type 2 diabetes, and that was all based on food, and eating the right foods and getting the right nutrients. And that's what we're really all about, is we want to share this information with people because food is medicine. It was there before with no cancer, no disease. And we want to get that out there and really share this information, and education is where it really starts. But we're there to plant the seed, but we want people out there to water the seed and have it germinate, and become educated and learn, because it's baby steps. You take some baby steps, you'll have some amazing changes. Because for me, reversing my type 2 diabetes didn't take a month or 2 months. It took me 6 months to learn a new lifestyle, and change my eating habits, and change exercise, and change the way I think about food and my health in general. So with that, Dr. Georgia, you did lose your husband due to cancer. And again, send our sympathies on that. And you struggled through that timeline in regards to, him being impacted, not only him, but you, your family, the kids, so forth and so on. What can you share with the viewers out there, some of your thoughts on that continued education, and maybe some potential things to look at or think about, and so they've got some more understanding.
Yeah, knowledge is power, and thank you, Jeff. Yeah, it was actually a devastating diagnosis. It came out of the blue. We had no idea. My husband and I actually had both acquired Epstein-Barr, which is a virus that known to cause chronic fatigue. And for him, we both got sick, but for him, it kept him punky for a while. And I was working my office. I was also the naturopath on staff at Creative Health Institute. We were like two ships in the night. One day I actually walked in on him in the bathroom brushing his teeth, and it was the way he looked at me seemed odd. And I walked over and I pushed his chin away, and there was a mass on his neck. And I asked him how long it had been there, and it had been there 3 weeks, and he didn't say anything to me. He thought he was detoxing, and he was really toxic, and that's why it took place. He was actually rebounding. It's a little mini trampoline. He was doing that. And the next day that happened, and he kind of correlated it, thinking it was that when it wasn't. And, I laid him down and I checked him out to see if there was any nodes anywhere else. I couldn't feel anything. And so I thought maybe he had a cracked tooth. And so I got him an appointment with the doctor. I think it was more than I could handle. So we went to the doctor. The doctor had he was just very persistent about, he wanted a CT scan, all of that. That was not an issue. We'll do whatever we need to take to get done. But I think that, I asked him if it was potentially possible that he could have an antibiotic. And so just a second here, just a second. Sorry, Mama's doing laundry outside.
That's okay.
So he did give us a high potent antibiotic, and we were set up for a CT scan. And a week later, my husband was complaining about his back. So a week later was when they were going to do the CT scan. The mass had gone down by half. The doctor was shocked. But I got to go with him. And that's one thing is, I tell my patients, it's very, very difficult for a provider to treat you if you're not honest and forthcoming with everything that you feel. especially in my realm, it's my job to put the pieces of the puzzle together. You're giving me the pieces by giving me your symptoms and telling me how you feel and those type of things. And it's my job to put them together, but we can't help if we don't have a full picture. So my husband didn't tell the doctor that his back had hurt the week prior, which it was hurting. He just didn't say anything. And so this time I went with him, the doctor, a week later, and the doc says, well, let's just take a look. So he went to lay him back on the table, and I could see a mass protruding from his abdomen. My husband wasn't a big man. I knew that we were in trouble. And so that was October 31st, Halloween, in fact. And then November 3rd, we had moved to another hospital. And then a few days later, we got the diagnosis that he had a very rare, very aggressive lymphoma. The type that he had is an 8-week beginning to end lymphoma without any kind of treatment. I remember them taking me outside and saying, you know, Mrs. Balsley, we'll do everything we can to save him, but the likelihood he's not going to walk out of this hospital. We want you to prepare yourself. I'll never forget that day. I remember folding my arms and said, that's your paradigm, it's not mine. They were very upset, the fact that I was in holistic medicine, and told me that I couldn't do anything. And I'm a fighter, so I'm just like, the person who gets to decide is laying in that bed. So we're going to do whatever he tells us to do. And so together, the doctors and I worked on my husband's behalf. My husband actually walked out of that hospital, which shocked the doctors. And by the way, he didn't eat any of the diet that the hospital had to offer, because there's no life-giving nutrition in hospital food. So it's really important, if you have a loved one in a hospital, that you take it upon yourself. And I know it's a burden, but they'll heal better if you give them really good foods to be able to draw nourishment from. But so I walked out of the hospital, and I got my husband for almost 2.5 years. The type of lymphoma he had was large diffuse B-cell lymphoma, double hit, which means he had a gene variation. They believe it was from the Epstein-Barr that attacked that gene and turned it on. And so they feel it's genetic. There is actually a triple hit as well, but it's so rare they have no treatment. They don't know how to address it. And my husband only had one type of therapy. For the type of cancer he had, people who have made it as long as he has had 2 to 3 different types of chemotherapy, bone marrow transplant, and some other things. My husband never had any of that. So that, to me, goes to the factor of what we've done inside his body to help him. And he passed away from, he acquired H1N1, and his immune system was still too weakened from the treatment. It was very aggressive, the type of treatment he had, and he couldn't beat it. It attacked his platelets and his white count. Balsley's, they either go big or go home, and he decided to have an appendix rupture on top of it to seal the deal. So that called him home. And I look back, and you know, now with the science that have come out, how many more things we could have done. You know, how longer could we possibly have had him, or could we have reversed it? You know, who really knows, right? But I'm able to take that knowledge and apply it to my patients, and say, okay, I know we did this, but we can enhance by doing this. And it's really made me, as a provider, actually puts me on the other side of the seat of the patient, and really take a look of how they feel and try to understand from that side. It's just, I've never dealt with my patients as just a number. To me, I treat them as though they were my mother, my sister, you know, my aunt, my daughter, and with that ability, but still, you know, just being able to provide the right care for them is just really important. And being an advocate, don't be afraid. If you get diagnosed with cancer, or you have a loved one diagnosed with cancer, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Right. Knowledge is power, and it's so critical that we do that. And so, you know, what's really exciting is I wish we would have had some of the, not only products, but I wish we would have had some of the nutrition in adjunct to what I was already doing, to be able to move forward. And we're already seeing that with patients. I mean, I have patients that have colorectal cancer that is stage 4, patients that have liver cancer and lung cancer and breast cancer. So, you know, it's really critical that we look at really helping that gut to be able to fight a pretty ravaged disease.
So with that being said, you mentioned liver. So if somebody is diagnosed with a couple of spots on their liver, uh, they should really start looking at their microbiome and doing a cleanup there, like a
Yes, very much
detox.
so.
And
And changing their diet, because the liver does so many functions in the body, and
right,
cleaning that out. So, one of the things I look at is the blood, because that's what it's cleaning, right? And so you want to make sure that you
yes,
clean that up to help the body heal itself.
awesome, awesome. That's great. And thank you for being so open and sharing about your experience with your husband. So so much to learn and so much to change, and that's very exciting. So with that, just share with us last question here before we kind of wrap up and I shut the recording down. But share with us a little bit from a naturopathic perspective. You know, we are working with a unique product line that targets specific neurotransmitters that aid in gut and mind healing. And I know that we've kind of talked offline a little bit about some of the products that you've had in your practice, but you've kind of moved some of that product line out and brought this product line in. So what are you finding is so special about this product line that is really having an impact with your patients?
Well, one of the things, like, even when Jeff, we have to address the gut and the brain together, there really isn't a set protocol for a practitioner to be able to use. So we're actually piecemealing products together to try to get an adjunct therapy to be able to address the issue that the patient comes with. What I find very valuable is the fact that not only are the products that we're utilizing are targeted, but because they come together in systems, it creates a cost reduction for our patients, which is important. I tell my patients, I said, I don't know about you, but I don't have that proverbial Dollar Tree planted in my backyard where I can go get whatever I need. So we have to be conscious about the wallet, but we want to be targeted to see results, because when patients come, they don't want to wait months, if not years, to try to see changes. They want to start seeing changes fairly quickly. Plus, what I like is that the products are organic, they're vegan, they're above GMOs, they're non-GMO and above organic standards, which is critical for me, because I can't tell people about detoxing a body and putting in garbage products. We can't. And so it isn't about selling products. I make it very clear to my patients. The thing is that we're using those as therapy to be able to get from point A to point B. Once we get to point B and we start helping you understand why you change your diet, you've changed your diet, working on that, continue, we should be able to back away and have a maintenance program. And I tell people, it doesn't matter how organic you eat, we still are vitamin depleted,
Right.
because our soils are just so depleted. And so there are
Yeah.
things that we still need to do to maintain and keep our immune system up. But I like the fact that I have the science, I have the research, I have the clinical data. I like the fact that it's organic, vegan, it's non-GMO. I can present it to my patients and know that I'm going to see targeted results and a cost reduction to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's great information. So we're kind of coming up onto the 40 minutes here, and thank you, Dr. Georgia from Taiwan. This is a special treat, and for those of you who are watching, thank you for joining us tonight. And 2 weeks from tonight, we'll do part 2 of microbiome and cancer. And then in November, we've got on the calendar baby microbiome. We're going to take December off and then resume in January with Parkinson's, ALS, and dementia and Alzheimer's. So we'll start out the year with that. And so for those of you who are watching, please reach out to the individual who invited you and follow up with them, and they can get the answers to your questions. And the last thing I want to say is, as I always say, hashtag poop matters, and it's really, really, really important that we treat our bodies like the temple that it is. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and I am going to shut this recording off. And let's see, let's